Okay, now, each emulator that I use has a way of recording. Actually, before I do this, let me run through the emulators that I do use that do record. So for the NES, I'm using FCE Ultra, and I also have FCE Ultra X in case something doesn't run on FCE Ultra, usually Famicom Disk System ROMs and stuff like that. For Super NES, I use SNES 9X. For Nintendo 64, I have two emulators. I have Mupen 64 and Project 64, and I use them in tandem. I usually use Project 64. If a game won't open or won't play properly in Project 64, I'll play it in Mupen 64. Mupen 64 actually has a recording feature like the other emulators I mentioned, but I don't use it because I found that using it actually affects the gameplay in the way that it it will make it choppy. So I use Hypercam when I do N64 videos. Just to run through this, for all the Sega systems, I use the same emulator. Well, actually, sort of a variation. I have Gens 9.5C, and I will occasionally have to use Gens Plus if I want to run 32X games. But Gens will open everything. It will open Sega Genesis, Master System, Game Gear, Sega CD. 32X runs better in Gens Plus, so I'll use that. Thing is, Gens Plus doesn't have recording, so when I do 32X videos through Gens Plus, actually not 32X videos. Sometimes I also do Master System videos through it. It depends on what's going on with the game. I'll use Hypercam. For all the Game Boy systems, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, I use Visual Boy Advance re-recording 19.3. As you see, I have a bunch of different Visual Boys, but that's the only one I actually use. I mean, there's the one for Game Boy, there's the one for Game Boy Color. I use that. That's the Game Boy Advance. It does everything, so I just use that. Let's see, what else? For Atari 2600, I do use Hypercam, but my emulator is PCAE Win. Okay, that would be like PC Atari Emulator Windows version. That's what that stands for. For the 5200, I use an emulator called Atari 800 Win, but it doesn't record, so I use Hypercam. For Atari 7800, I use a program called Pro System. Once again, I use Hypercam for that. For arcade, I haven't done a lot of arcade, but I do use MAME32. I only do arcade for features because I don't take requests for it as of right now. For ColecoVision, I use Virtual Coleco. I haven't done many of those, but I do use Hypercam with that. For the Intellivision, I use... fucking, come on now. I hate when it does this. I use Bliss JX, and I do use Hypercam for that. For the Jaguar, I haven't done a lot of Jaguar because it doesn't really work, but I have two emulators. I have Virtual Jaguar and Project Tempest, and it's not even worth it. For the Lynx, I use a program called Handy, and I also use Hypercam there. For the MSX, once again, this is only for certain features because I don't take MSX requests, but the emulator I have been using is Blue MSX, and I use Hypercam there. For the DS, once again, I've only used it a couple of times. I use a program called No Cache Game Boy Advance. There's some other DS emulators. This is the one that's easy. I also use a plugin called MyZoom, which make the windows bigger, and I use Hypercam there. For Neo Geo, I have a couple of different solutions. I have Neo MAME 32 and WinCoax, and I don't see it here, but I know I have Neo Ragex somewhere in there. For PlayStation, I use EPSXE. It's simply the only one worth using. For PlayStation 2, I've been using PCSX2. Somebody's told me that the new version is way better. I've only done 2 videos, and it was only as a demonstration. For the Saturn, I use something called Yabaus. These are all Hypercam ones. Sega CD, I mentioned that already. TurboGrafx, I use a program called PCE. And that's it. Oh, for Virtual Boy, I use a program called Red Dragon. And for the X68000, I use EX68 Windows version, actually. There's a couple of different versions in there. Here it is, WinX68K High Speed in English. Okay, so let me show you just an NES game and how I record a really quick video. So let's say I wanted to do Abadox, since that one seems to be coming up a lot lately. By the way, I've gotten 3 video requests to my Abadox video already, and I hope to get more video requests, and I hope that the things that you're learning in this video will help you make one. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to reset the game. That's under the NES menu. If you're using a different emulator, it might be different. I just recommend you use this one. And then very quickly, you're going to hit here. Now, if the screen's gray, you're going to want to unclick and click again. You don't want the screen to be gray. Now what you're going to do is you're going to come over to Record AVI. It's different in every emulator, but that's basically what you're looking for. Then you're going to be prompted to save your file. I save everything to the desktop, so I'm going to just name it AB. The reason I don't name it Abadox is because that's what the final video is going to be named, and I just give it a really short name because this is a temporary version. So I'm going to save it, and then you're in any emulator, you're always going to get this same window, the video compression. You're going to choose your compressor, and it's going to be the same thing as I showed you in HyperCam, FFD Show Video Codec. You might want to click the configure screen, and it'll bring up the same exact screen. Now, when you change things in here, it doesn't save it in that program, it saves it in the encoder. So if I had changed it to 500 to do an N64 video, and then I open it up in HyperCam or a Genesis emulator, it's still going to be 500. And the video will look a little better, but the file size will be too big. So make sure you check on that to make sure the bit rate is at what you want it to be. Now I'm going to drag this window over here by HyperCam, not HyperCam, GoldWave, so that my record button and my OK button are right next to each other. The reason is because when I click OK, the video is going to start recording, and then I want the audio to record. Now, a very important thing is here, this is my clock. This is how I can tell how much time has passed. If you're not seeing the clock, it means the window's not big enough, so make sure you can see it. So I'm going to just do that, and then click. And then click over here on the emulator. Now, some emulators have a feature where if you lose focus, if you click off of them, the emulator will pause. Make sure that option is turned off. You don't want that, because if something pops up, like my antivirus will pop up occasionally, or somebody will instant message me or something, for whatever reason, if anything pops up, no matter how fast you go back to it, your recording of video is going to be less than your recording of audio. And you're going to have problems with that. It's going to desync. So just play the game for a little while and just talk. And you can see over here, you can see that it's recording me. And you just play it for a little while or whatever. Okay, now let's say I decide my video is over. All you have to do is close the emulator. You don't have to go into the options or anything. You don't have to worry about it. Just close the emulator and then kind of quickly come over here and press stop. It doesn't have to be exact. So just going to hit stop. Now I'm going to hit the trim button. So now all I'm seeing here is what I've recorded. Now here's the third program that you're going to need, the program that ties everything together. It's called Virtual Dub Mod. You might know of Virtual Dub. I want to actually look for Virtual Dub Mod. Once again, this is not a free program. Just want to let you know that. Don't ask me where to get it. Anyway, we're going to come over here and we're going to hit Open Video File. Find my video, which is right here, and there we have it. Now we're going to go to Streams. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take off the audio that the emulator recorded, which does not include my voice, and we're going to put in the audio that I recorded. Now if you're using HyperCam, you don't need to do this, because HyperCam records audio, but you should do it anyway because the audio that HyperCam records is in WAV format. And if you want your file size to be manageable, you don't want your audio to be in WAV format. You want it to be in MP3 format. Now, if you want to be able to make MP3 format, you're going to need an MP3 encoder. GoldWave doesn't actually come with one. You're going to want an encoder called the LAME MP3 video encoder. It is free, and you could easily find it on Google. Just search for LAME MP3 encoder. Once you install it, your audio program, whether it's GoldWave or whether it's anything else, is going to know exactly what to do. Anyway, you're going to go to Streams, and you're going to click on Stream List, and it's going to bring up the available streams. You only have one here, so you're going to hit Save Wave, and it's going to ask you to name it. So we'll name it AB for Abadox, like I normally do. And you're going to save it. It shouldn't take too long, but it depends on the length. That was only 56 seconds, so it went really quick. And I'm going to come over to GoldWave. I'm going to open that file. right here. So here we have on top, we have what the emulator recorded, and here we have what I recorded. Now I don't want to just replace it, I want to actually mix them together so that you can actually hear a little bit of the game music and sounds while I'm talking. Now you notice sometimes you don't hear the sounds, and you'll notice that that happens a lot on Sega Genesis. That's because for whatever reason, Sega Genesis emulators don't seem to, or at least Gens does not record sound properly. So that's why my Sega videos don't have the music in them. Peace.